Welcome back to 7th Gen Accord Revamp. Today we're going to go over everything that's been done to the car. It's pretty much complete. We did LEDs, shifter bushings, we cleaned up the paint, and a bunch of other little things that I want to go over with you guys today. Alright, so starting off, the biggest thing we did in terms of change of the car is I corrected the paint to the best of my ability. It has been sitting for 15 years. It's cleaned, I wouldn't say often, but it was cleaned. So I went and did a degrease, clay bar, polish, and a light basic ceramic coating, like a hybrid ceramic coating from Meguiar's. So basically with the paint, it was faded a little bit. We brought it back to life. The polish really did work fairly well. There's no clear coat because it is 15 years. So that being said, having the car for 15 years, the clear coat will go away. So to protect that, I did the hybrid ceramic wax stuff from Meguiar's. There's a little picture of it on the screen right now. And that has worked really well. Ryan, who's actually standing behind the camera right now, helped me detail this right before we started shooting. And we just used the stuff that came with the clay bars, some like Mother's Instant Detailer. And it cleaned up pretty nice in the span of like 10 minutes. We didn't bother with the roof or anything like that, just enough to show you guys like the main panels. So that came out pretty well. The hybrid ceramic wax, what it does is it's a sealant. It's almost like Rain-X for your windows, except that this is for your paint. So if I were to spray the car right now with a pressure washer or a hose, all that water is going to come off in droplets. So it's really good for having the car out and not worrying about like necessarily cleaning it up. That coating protects it and protects what's left of the paint. Okay, so come on over and take a look at what we did. So the plastic, the side skirts were faded. They're a little dusty right now just from driving, but I used some plastic trim restore, some Meguiar stuff to do that and get it out. I also used a little bit of Scratch X to kind of pull the scratches out of the paint to the best of my ability. And the polish did a good job of that as well. So all the micro scratches are pretty much gone. Anything bigger still remains to a certain extent, so it's not that bad. We also did up here the plastic trim restore on the edge. Again, it looks a little dirty because all we did was a quick detail before this video. That's because the car is currently on a longer sort of test drive after all the work we've done. So that's why it's not exactly 100% clean, but that doesn't matter. The plastic trim looks good. It's lasted so far. And everything you see here is ceramic coated. You can feel it. It's not necessarily like the greatest ceramic coat. I did everything by hand, but it's still on there. You can feel the difference. It's not like you're not moving your hand on direct paint, but you can feel that there's a coating on top of it protecting it. So for inside the car, we didn't do anything super special. I mentioned earlier just the map dome light, or the map and the dome lights were changed to LED. The interior was cleaned up. I used plastic trim restore on the little trim pieces here. I did fix this little door, so it opens and closes now. Before it didn't. That's like super easy, although right now it's being slightly annoying. I did fix it, and I guess I'll insert a little clip here of how I did that. I think I recorded it, so if not, there's something online. I'll put it on the screen or check the description regarding it. But it's super simple. The radio still doesn't work. That's unfortunate. I couldn't figure out how to fix that. It probably requires some more electronics work, like some soldering of some resistors, like I mentioned earlier in a different video. So haven't really been able to fix that yet, but maybe in the future I might put some money towards one of those Android 10-inch touchscreen arrangements here that still works with the stock air conditioning controls. So instead of changing out this for a radio, I did tighten up the gas pedal throttle underneath in the engine bay, so there's no more like real flop to it. It just has a little tiny bit of play, but when you're driving, that play is in a good position because you can let off lightly without like having to like really let off the pedal. So that's something else we adjusted too. One little cheesy thing is the eBay shift knob. It's upside down. It's yeah. That's basically how it's on. I cut the little plastic clip for the stock shift knob and put a little zip tie here. It's nothing fancy, it's just weighted. Alright, so for the engine bay, I did clean the engine bay. That was in kind of the last two videos, I think. It was a mix of maintenance stuff. So I cleaned the engine bay lightly, and then Cameron and I, there's pictures right now, we went ahead and pulled the valve cover and did some valve adjustments. Now in the previous video, or the one after that, I went over kind of the measurements we took of our clearances for the valve, if they were in spec or not after 15 years and 148,000 miles, and if you should adjust them or not. So I mentioned that in the other video. So if you want to learn more about that, go back a few videos and look for that. It's like kind of an all-in-one maintenance video where I just combined several little jobs into one long video. But we did that, we put it together, test drove it, pulled it off again, did a couple more adjustments, and then after that I went ahead and re-cleaned the engine bay as best I could. It's not perfect, but it looks pretty good for 148,000 miles. Like the whole power steering was like this whole pump here, and an assembly was just black, and it got cleaned up. We did new gaskets for the plenum, so there's a gasket under here for the intake plenum, and then for the manifold to the plenum there's a gasket. There's another gasket here that goes from the throttle body into the manifold, so we replaced that. I cleaned up the hose. It has some cracks, so I'm debating whether I should change something about that or not. We did get a new battery about 2 weeks ago, and that's been fine. I haven't gone back and done a parasitic draw test yet, but it's been starting every time. I mean, we've driven the car, sometimes it's sat for up to 3 days. Come in, start it, no problem. That's all thanks to also that new starter we put in. So that was something that I wanted to do. Ryan also agreed, because we're both splitting costs in terms of maintenance. So the starter has worked well so far, no complaints. It cranks faster, and with the new battery, it's really good to go. Other than that, oil change, and I went ahead and drained the radiator, put some different coolant in, some like Preston mix coolant, so there's a water and coolant mixture in there. I'm using that as a flush. So I think after the next 200 miles, I'm gonna take it out and then go ahead and put the recommended Honda coolant in there, just so everything is nice and clean. So that sums it up for the engine bay. Besides it looking good, the car performs just fine. So, oh yeah, one last thing, I did adjust the throttle cable. So if you need to do that, right here, super easy. Your cruise control box is right here. So if you want to adjust your cruise control line, I suggest you go out and drive it for a bit and see on hills and stuff if it like really catches the throttle cable hard or anything like that, to really fine tune it. But that was a super easy adjustment. Yeah, that's it for the engine bay. So I did all the span of the work. Ryan wasn't actually home to see nearly any of the work, which is okay. So he actually drove it for the first time, I think a few weeks ago now, after everything had been done, and the lights and everything like that. And so I actually have him here. He's been filming the whole time, graciously. So Ryan, what was your initial reaction after, well, not after driving it for a while, but you've driven it before. How did it feel after the adjustments? Just so they don't think like I'm making it up, like it doesn't feel any different.
Well, the gas pedal adjustment that he did, that was instant. That was the first thing I noticed. The gas pedal was instant instead of the little delay it used to have and the little flop.
Yeah.
And then the valves, it runs smoother, it seems.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I noticed. It's quieter actually too.
So when I did the valve adjustments, one thing I didn't mention right now is we actually cleaned out all the carbon. I think I mentioned that in the big maintenance video. We cleaned out all the carbon buildup that we could get to. So that made a big difference. Everything is like super clean in there right now. So that made a massive difference in terms of like it performing or feeling smoother and how the power comes on, because we've opened up a little more airflow after removing some of that buildup. So that did help. But what about the lights, like the LEDs, the front, right here? We're talking our parking lights.
Those ones, they're almost brighter than the headlights, not gonna lie.
We actually need to go through and take the stock bulbs out, and actually some of them aren't even stock, they've been replaced, but they're dark. And if you even turn it on one, the white is like super nice to have, honestly.
Yeah.
At night, you can see things with it.
Yeah, it makes the car look newer too, even though it's old. So.
Yeah. Oh, and the reverse lights too. The LED reverse lights have been nicer. You can actually see more at night when you're backing up. And they're kind of shot out at an angle so you can see the sides of the car rather than directly behind the car, which is super helpful if you're parking towards something. But those are super bright and been super happy with it. One last thing, shifter bushings. I know we didn't mention that under the hood, but we did shifter bushings. They're somewhere in there. Check the big maintenance video, you'll learn more about them. But how did those feel?
Well, I kind of forgot how the car drove at first because it was so different, but it was like a nice different. Everything felt more precise. Before there was a lot of play, and you weren't sure if you were in gear actually. So I like that.
So what the bushings did was stiffen up kind of each gear change without changing the box inside. The box inside still has a little bit of play, but this, like when you put it into gear, it feels more direct. It feels more like, it's more of like a satisfying solid like push into gear. I don't really know how to explain it, but there's a difference to it. It feels sharper in terms of like bushing change, because we did change to hybrid racing bushings rather than those stock kind of mushy old rubber bushings. So that did make a difference. But other than that, the whole car is in pretty good shape after we did the work. Didn't bother to clean the wheels, don't need to. Although I noticed while driving it on the little road test, this longer road test, that when I get on the brake, especially while it's in gear and we're kind of like slowing down, before I push my foot in on the clutch, I do feel a little kind of shimmy under braking. Not quite sure what that is. I think, I don't know, drive it for a bit, I'll take a look. I don't think it's anything wrong with the pads or the rotors, but that's just some little thing I've noticed. But other than that, everything's been fine. Like the car drives great, runs great, gas mileage is as expected, and we can't complain. Ryan and I have a car that's been upkept pretty well over 15 years in terms of mechanical maintenance, but exterior maintenance not so well. So we corrected that, added a few modern things, and I think it's perfect for daily driving. Leave a comment if you guys are doing this to your Accords. I really want to know, and if you've done something different, like a different kind of mod or something that would be useful and that's really cheap, leave it in the comments for other people to read. I will definitely read it. And if Ryan and I think it's worth doing to the car, we'll actually maybe look into doing it.